Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Life Podcast. I'm not alone today in my hosting duties. I've got Mr. Pat Yates with me. Pat, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you today?
Good, man. I appreciate you helping me out here. We're interviewing Josh. Oh, no.
Hadley.
Josh Hadley from Hadley Designs. So Josh is a podcast host. He and his wife run a 10-figure business. I'm sorry, that's not right. An 8-figure business. I'm getting all sorts of things wrong in the intro here today, folks, because Pat is just, his aura is so big, it's making me confused. Right, Pat?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Josh is an amazing guy. I tell you what, you talk about a guy that, he was working at a corporate job. His wife starts something, builds this amazing business, then jumps in and they jump it up to a 10-figure business. Absolutely so much knowledge. You guys are really smart. He's done an amazing job managing teams and hiring people. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, we cover things in this interview with him from his how is it working with a spouse? How do you survive a marriage with 3 kids and building an 8-figure business? During COVID, he went from 1,000 orders a day to I think 1 or 2, and then settled in at about 100 a day. And this is just after actually COVID hit, right? March 2020. They closed on a house February 28th. 2020 on a big new home, and then the floor fell out of their revenue. They survived that, and then they grew from I think $1 million in 2017 to hitting 8 figures in 2022.
Yeah,
but they really had to pivot a little bit during COVID, and they learned an awful lot. They were launching stuff off Amazon because that's what they were told they had to do, and put a lot of time, energy, and money into that, and then had to pull back on that and really focus on pulling the right levers to accelerate growth, getting to that 8 figures. He talks a little bit about, which I thought was just fascinating, the interview process. They've got 26 remote employees now, and the interview process they go through, and how sometimes they'll start with 1,000 applicants and they do no work to cull that down to 100. And then a little bit of work to get it down to 30. And then he actually, in most cases, has the applicants choosing who the best person for the position is in a group interview process. It's fascinating. He's a great guy.
That is incredible.
He's full of knowledge. He's got his own podcast called Ecomm Breakthrough. If you don't like myself and Pat, just skip it and go right there, because he's just a smart guy. And if you want to learn stuff, you want to go there. But let's jump to what he's got to say. Here we go.
Welcome to the Quiet Life Podcast. Josh, it's great to have you here today.
Hey, excited to be here, Pat.
That's great. So tell us a little bit, where are you from, Josh? Give us an idea of what you do and where you're from.
Yeah, I'm in Dallas, Texas, and my wife and I own a stationery brand, an 8-figure stationery brand, primarily selling on Amazon. We've been in the Amazon space since 2016. Fall of 2016 is when we launched our first product, and we've been able to ramp up sales from then.
8 figures is pretty impressive, Pat. My goodness. Are you doing that with Happy Feet?
No, we're not doing that with that. That's impressive. I looked over the site. Some of your stuff is really, really cool, Josh. How did you get into this business? Very curious.
Yeah. So my wife is a graphic designer, but she wasn't coming out of college. We both graduated college at the same time. We were originally from Utah. I got a job offer from American Airlines in their MBA leadership development program. And I started working for American Airlines and was there with them for 5 years. But as soon as we moved down, my wife was dabbling in graphic design. She started designing some friends' wedding invitations for fun. And she just kept getting referral after referral. And so for me, in the nighttime, when I'd come home from work, I helped her kind of set up or create this wedding invitation business. And I would run all the sales and processes for the business. And then she would just focus on designing and getting them shipped out to the customer. And so we did that, but it got to a point where, we could not scale the business any further because my wife was just working day in and day out with just one-on-one wedding clients, which, as you know, anything working with brides can be stressful. And so we then, there were a lot of people pitching the Amazon courses at the time. And I dabbled in Amazon and sold a few different things and tried a different private label product. And then the idea kind of clicked in our minds. It's like, wait, why don't we try to take some of these products that our customers are requesting, these brides, and send them or sell them on Amazon. And one thing that we kept getting asked repeatedly was, hey, can you create a recipe card for my bridal shower? And it's like, okay, number one, you're paying $1,000 for your wedding invitation to be designed. It's about the same amount of work that's going into creating any type of design. And so for a recipe card design, like, you're not going to pay $1,000. So that ended up being one of our first products that we launched on Amazon. And we sold out within, I think, 4 to 6 weeks. And for the first time, we're like, wait, we made something once, we printed it, and now we can just reprint it and we're off to the races. Like, that's when the idea, that kind of heavens open, so to speak, and we were off to the races. And so that was the fall of 2016. 2017 was our first full year on Amazon. We did over $1 million in revenue on Amazon. So we knew, the path was there.
So getting into this niche, though, she was obviously a designer, but I look behind you, some beautiful woodwork and stuff. Is she a designer just of graphics, or does she do like home stuff like that as well? Because you look in the back, you can tell obviously it's beautiful.
You come into our home and our home looks great. That's because of her. But
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, she's a creative mind. She just has a good eye for design across the board. But yeah, for her area of specialty, she's not an interior designer by trade, but I think they go hand in hand for sure.
I can see this interview going 2 paths. One, how the heck are you able to survive the marriage while having your wife be your business partner? 2, how do you scale beyond 7 figures and get to 8? I want to hear about that as well. But you've got a successful marriage, successful business. Is it successful because you stay in your own lanes, or what's the trick there?
Yeah, I think that is a great question and a good place to start, because, so many people, when they find out, oh, you're working with your wife, like, I can't imagine living and working with my spouse, significant other, or even my business.
Thank you.
Partner.
It is spouse, folks. It's not just working with wives. We all have to have wives, so we say wives, but it's just as bad for them working with us, I'm sure. At least that's what my wife says. I don't know what yours says, Pat.
And my wife
does say that.
Yeah, they just have. My wife, fortunately, has a lot of patience with me. But we have 3 kids as well, and they're young. So we have a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old right now.
Wow.
And so we're busy. We're going 1,000,000 miles an hour. But here's, I think, one of the biggest principles that we've learned in our life that applies to the business and kind of the success that we've been able to create is we are always doing weekly and daily planning sessions. Because there is so much going on with our family. I coach 3 different sports teams. I've got a hockey team, I've got a baseball team, and a basketball team I'm coaching for my son. And my wife's just involved with the kids and their schooling as well. And so it all comes down to being able to set, what are our goals as a family? What are our goals in our relationship? And then what are our goals with our business? And then being able to backtrack all of those annual goals into monthly goals, into weekly goals, into daily goals. So really it comes down to that communication, planning, and being on the same page. I think that's where most friction starts with any relationship, even outside of a marriage.
I'm really curious. I know you started this, and obviously she's the one that started it, and then you came into the business. When did you all decide that was necessary? Was it a growth phase? Was it a point of sales? What was the decision behind that? Or could you just add value at that time and it just made sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was at American Airlines for 5 years, but my wife had started the wedding invitation business, like literally, I think month 2 into me working at American Airlines. So we had always kind of been doing this side hustle thing from day one. And, for me, I was the kid with the candy stand on the corner of the street growing up. So I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, and it was where my passion was. We kept growing the business. Like I said, 2017 was our first full year on Amazon, did over $1 million. But then it wasn't until 2019 that I actually left American Airlines. And for me, it was a matter of seeing American Airlines as my venture capital, so to speak, because we didn't have to we were able to reinvest all of the profits into the business and then just continue living off my salary. And in addition to that, the lifestyle we had set up was come home from work and we just grinded. We just worked.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my wife is just as passionate about business as I am. And so it worked. I think that could be an obstacle if she was always begging, like, no, I don't want to work. Let's just watch shows tonight. It's like, I wouldn't be where I am today if we didn't, actually sit down and, work is our hobby.
How long did it take you to get where you are today to that 8-figure range? I mean, hitting that million mark, that 7-figure mark, it's hard, right? Obviously most businesses fail, but once you start to see a path towards that, you hit it. But the next step, I mean, you're talking about 10 times the revenue to get to 8 figures.
Yeah.
How long did it take from 17 to when did you hit that first 8-figure year?
Yeah. So we hit it in 2022. We hit that 8-figure mark there. We could have gotten there a lot faster. And that's the intro on my own podcast that I run is, hey, it's great. I made it to these 8 figures, but I made a lot of mistakes along the way that honestly made the path of getting to 8 figures take a lot longer than it needed to. And we can kind of break down what some of those obstacles were.
Let's hear it.
So one thing that we did, we immediately saw some success on Amazon. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made is I kept hearing all the voices out there in the world that kept saying, oh, you got to start diversifying your revenue from Amazon because you could wake up one morning and Amazon's just going to shut down your account for no reason. Right. And so this was like 2018. And we're like, oh my goodness, well, we've done so well on Amazon. Yeah, we need to start diversifying our business. So we ended up spending the majority, I would say more than 80% of our time in the business focused on creating a new business. So instead of selling these physical products that we were shipping into Amazon, we had this genius idea of, hey, let's create the digital file templates that people can go buy from Etsy or from our website, and they could just download them, print them at home. That's amazing, right? Now, that is a good side hustle. And I know there's other moms that do that at home and make a good 6-figure income just from selling those templates. But as you compare that to the trajectory of what we were doing on Amazon, is like, dude, you're bending over to pick up pennies when you're being hit by this, this dollar bill is sitting out here and you're just completely neglecting it. And so, we spent so much time and we started hiring people to support this Etsy business because we're like, well, it's not $1 million yet because we don't have the marketing. Okay. So we hired a marketing professional. Well, then we don't have enough designs to support all of these. We just need more designs. So we hired 2 additional graphic designers. And so we had over almost $200,000 in salaries that we were paying to support this business that was not even making $200,000. And yet Amazon, we would continue to feed Amazon, but it wasn't our sole focus. And Amazon just kept growing and growing and growing. And so that was kind of the biggest principle that I learned is number one, like focus on, or you need to look at your business and identify the levers that if you pull them, provide outsized returns. And here's the thing, like in a business, there are so many different levers that you could pull, right? You could focus on marketing. You hear people killing it with Instagram influencers or TikTok ads. And, back in the day, I was this squirrel, that's like, oh, somebody's doing this. I need to go start Facebook ads. Oh, somebody's doing this. I need to jump on that. And so it diverted my attention and completely eliminated, the progress that we were making, or I guess diluted the progress we were making. And so the big pivot in the business really came in COVID. So prior to COVID, so 2019, I think we did it was over 5 million. And then 2020 comes and most of our products, because we were in that wedding space originally, serve that events and party supply space.
You must have been slaughtered.
COVID happens and we just get punched in the mouth. We will 90% decrease in our business.
Wow. That must have been a stressful time at home.
it was the worst time
Yeah.
In my life, because we had just purchased a new home as well. We closed on a new home, nice, beautiful home, lots of space for, future family and all that stuff. We closed on it February 28th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
And COVID comes in and just decimates things. And I watch things just start to crumble overnight, going from 1,000 orders a day to lucky if we could get 100. And I'm like, it's all just starting to fall apart.
Okay. So, before we jump onto the going from 5 million to 10, talk to us about just being an entrepreneur, being a husband, being a father.
Yeah.
And what kind of recommendations you would give to yourself now, knowing that shit happens and your revenue could dry up. Sometimes your account does get suspended and you have to fix it. Sometimes stuff like COVID hits. Is it 6 months worth of cash expenses? Is it what are you trying to do now? What safety nets are you putting in place for yourself and your family so that you don't stress out?
Yeah, great question. So we work with kind of our wealth advisor. They're kind of like a fractional family office, Do Wealth, somebody that we had met through the War Room Mastermind group. And they do a phenomenal job of, one of the biggest expenses for a business owner is taxes, right? And so the strategies that we've been able to employ to really kind of like shelter away money, not illegally, right? Just following what the government really wants you to be doing and investing there has provided us personally with the safety net that we need. Now, as it relates to the business, based on what I learned from COVID, there's two things. Number one, having 6 months worth of working capital in a business can be your lifeline, right? And that's definitely erring on the side of like, you're probably more than good at 6 months.
Yeah.
That's my level of comfort right now coming out of that experience. But in addition to that, I learned that having access and already setting up those kind of credit lines, like you couldn't go tap a credit line.
Oh my God.
After COVID happened, right?
So speaking my language right now.
So
I talked to you. I said this on a call the other day, Pat. Yeah.
He did.
Look, say it again right now. Anybody that is out there running a business, set
go
up a
get
line
that
of
credit line
now.
Even if you don't need it.
Yes, absolutely. If you don't need it, someday you will. It's going to be peace of mind to tap into it, whether it's a HELOC or a line of credit through your investment portfolio, any way, shape, or form that you can get it, sign up for it. Get it done.
Agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
Actually, Josh, real quickly, Josh, what I did was I sold my last business in, 2010, November 2010, we closed. And then I got kind of lazy with my taxes and didn't file them. I filed them by April 15th the following year. And I knew I was going to buy another business. I had a ton of equity in my house. I had a ton of cash on hand, but I wanted to buy a bigger business. I filed my taxes. And then, probably the 1st of May, I went to the bank, a local bank where I know the manager of the bank. And we have coffee and we talk. And, I go in and I'm like, Pat, I want to set up a HELOC. I'll probably use some of it to buy a business. And she says, well, Joe, that's wonderful, but you don't have a job. I'm like, what? She's like, yes, you filed your tax returns and you don't have a job. You don't have any income. I'm like, but what about my portfolio? All this. And now granted, this was 2010 and things are looser now.
Yeah.
It was, I couldn't set it up because I didn't have a job. So people that are selling their businesses, set up that line of credit first. You'll have some cash afterwards, but get it done and get it done now as buyers, because the right business may come along and if you can't act on it and somebody else can, you're going to lose out. All right. Sorry, Josh, tangent there. So you set up your line of credits. That's peace of mind. You've got 6 months of working capital in the business. That's peace of mind. And then whatever you need personally. Okay. I total tangent there and I took you off path. Sorry. Keep going.
I like it. I think those are important principles. You want to dive into kind of how we pivoted then?
Absolutely.
I do have a question before you pivot. You mentioned something I meant to ask you about earlier. I think you and I have something even more in common. I coached high school basketball for 10 years and it was kind of an escape from being an entrepreneur. I could go in and work with kids and be able to teach, do things like that. It's interesting to me that you do that, especially as expansive as you are. Most of my kids are out of the house, but how do you balance that as well? Because your time becomes really, really important, especially you and your wife, because those sports fall down on both of you. Even if she's not coaching, she's going to games. So how are you all able to balance that? I remember those times are not
He's
easy because I had 3 boys as well.
He's just a bad coach. That's what it is, right, Josh?
Yeah, exactly. I just show up and it's like, wait, there's a game today.
Right.
No, it is a great question. And, a lot of people do ask me, because I'll coach the same group of boys across these different sports. And they're always like, why, like, you're always so eager to do this coaching. Well, number one, to me, it is my outlet where it's like, I just enjoy being around with my son. It's a way that I build a relationship with him. Like my dad built that relationship with me. At the end of the day, the main reason why I do it would be I love to kind of future pace myself and look at me laying on my deathbed and saying, what really matters? Right. And at the end of the day, what really matters is, do I have family by my side that says, I remember doing XYZ with dad. I remember what dad taught me. I remember doing this. I don't want them to say, all I remember about dad is that he made us a bunch of money, but I never saw him.
That's a great way to put it, because I was in the same position. That's an awesome statement.
Yeah. That's
really
what
good.
drives it.
Right. Well, back to what we were just talking about, from 5 to 10 million, you got your credit line, like Joe said. I was just curious on the coaching thing. Tell us what the steps were to get to there, because that's got to be a whole nother layer of infrastructure, people, and everything. So I'm curious.
It was. Yeah. So COVID happens, right? Sales go down 90%. Obviously, at that point, we lay off the team that was supporting this failing business endeavor of pursuing these digital templates. And so we're back to square one. So my wife and I were sitting down. We're like, where do we go from here? How do we make the correct pivot in our business? So Amazon kept hobbling along, and as the months went on past March, like began to get a little better, not drastically, but a little bit. So there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. What we did do is that was finally our wake up call to say, like, okay, everything else has dried up except 100 orders a day on Amazon. Okay, this is where we can focus. And so all of a sudden, and what's funny is I was part of the War Room Mastermind group. So Ryan Dice, Perry Belcher, Roland Frazier, all 3 of them during that time, I got on the phone with them. I was like, this is where I'm at. What should I do? And Ryan Dice was like, as I walked through everything, he's like, dude, you already know what to do. You keep talking about how you make the money on Amazon and you want to give it more time, but you're scared. It's like, just go do it.
So often we know what to do. We just need to hear somebody else say it and reinforce it.
Yeah. It wasn't even game changing or earth shattering.
Yeah.
It was just simple. And I was like, yeah, it's exactly what we need to do.
Did you expand the product line to not be so dependent on weddings?
So that's when we said, okay, well, parties aren't working on Amazon anymore. So what do we do now? At that time, homeschooling stuff was going crazy, right? So we dabbled into the educational space. We launched a product that became the #1 bestseller in a very competitive category. It was kind of our lifeline. And that's when it all like clicked. It was like, okay, there's more products like this that we could launch. All we need to do is just build our team around launching products on Amazon. So in the fall of 2020, we hired a project manager and a new product development manager. And those were the 2 core pieces of the business that allowed us to say, hey, the process and the biggest lever we could pull is creating new products. And so from there, that's when we began to scale the team. And now we're up to 26 team members today. But
how many did you have back then? Was it just you and your wife and the 2 of them?
My wife and I, and then we had an assistant. It was my sister. And then once we added those 2, a project manager, and then we had the product research and development manager that we brought on.
And how many products did you have then in the fall of 2020 versus how many you have now in 2023?
I think we had about 400 products, and now we're over 1,200 products on Amazon.
Oh, wow. How do you keep track of all those? Do you manufacture, or is it print here in the U.S. or how's it?
Yeah. So fortunately, everything's printed here in the U.S.
So you didn't have to deal with the tariffs and all that other stuff as well. You're probably pleased then.
Yes.
Pat wasn't.
And all the shipping issues.
Yeah. Right. Pat was not happy.
No, that was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you got hit with COVID and then you got hit with, containers costing 4 times as much. You got hit with COVID, Josh, but it sounds like you came out of it pretty slick.
Yeah. And it's just been a process of focusing on that lever that actually provides the outsized return on the business and not worrying about, the Instagram influencers or the TikTok ads. Those are well and good. And I think they have a place for, some dabbling, but not pivoting my business to where I'm focusing most of my time there. And so we realized launching new products is where the lifeblood was. And that's what we built the entire team around. Everybody supports launching new products. It's the number one priority in our business. That's what we drive into the minds of all of our team members, that we will always prioritize supporting a new product launch rather than any other initiatives. Those are pet projects.
That's fantastic. Can you tell me a little bit, what are your best-selling designs? Because it seems as if when you expanded, you've more than doubled the amount of things so how did you know which ones we're going to introduce? Was it a beta testing? You do A/B testing on certain designs? What made you narrow this down, and what are your best-selling items?
Yeah, good question. So we've always had calendars, has been a really good category for us. But it's difficult because the supply chain is a little more challenging, right? You've got a product that actually expires, right? And so, doing a lot more like demand planning becomes very important there. But ultimately what we did is we just kept, it's the simple tools that everybody else uses in the Amazon space of the Helium 10s, the Jungle Scouts, where you go and identify like, hey, what are specific product categories and how much revenue are they doing? One thing that our R&D manager does right now is they are always looking for 20 new product ideas to add to our list of potential products every single week. And so that's a component of looking at what our competitors are releasing. It's a component of, just typing into Amazon's, search box, seeing what's trending in the top 100 each day. It's also a component of, one of the best things that we have found is go to other marketplaces, whether it be Target, whether it be Etsy, whether it be Wayfair, or any of these other websites, or even Walmart. And when you type in a search term, if you see something trending on Target and you go to Amazon, you type that in and that product's nowhere to be found, or the designs don't, are kind of outdated, it seems. That's where we found the most opportunity, is being able to, just bring innovation. And I think that's one thing that, all the people that pitch the Amazon courses, it's like, make $1 million overnight just by, printing your brand name on this spatula. It's like, oh, my friend, like that is not the name of this game. The name of this game is come to the product or come to the market and serve a customer with something that they need. Provide something new. They don't need more Me Too products unless you can provide them at a lesser cost. So for us, we're a premium product because we've got unique designs that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And that's the core capability that my wife has. So I can't really take much credit for any of this, because if she weren't part of this business, and she's just creative in and of herself. She goes to Hobby Lobby, she'll go to Target, she'll go to, all these home goods supply stores, and she can just see and create things that aren't on the market. Like, she's not emulating anybody else, but bringing just new stuff to the market. And that's really where the magic happens.
I'm curious, with 1,200 SKUs, Josh, how often do you determine to reduce it? Are there any SKUs that are hero SKUs, and do you, have a minimum threshold that they have to sell on a monthly basis before you scrap it?
Yeah, another great question. So this year is actually the first year that we are actually paying attention to those metrics and those numbers, because the whole focus, like I said, has just been launch, which is well and good. And now you get to a point where it's like, okay, how do I manage this large SKU count? And so we've been training some product managers that are actually going to oversee these products. And for the first time, we've actually created a SKU level profitability report. And it's opened my eyes to say, holy smokes, there's products that are actually losing us money. And so, yes, that is what we are working on this year is like, all right, now we can clean this up and it makes us that much more profitable and easier to manage as well.
I think some people out there in the audience, they may have a business, $3, $4, $5 million. And to them, it seems like going to, to 8 figures, 10 million is like, no way they could possibly do it. I'm sure you had ideas of things you thought were going to happen when you were moving to that. What was the thing that was most surprising? What's something you expected to go really well from 5 to 10 million, but then didn't, that you'd say, please don't ever do this if you're moving in that direction?
Yeah. Probably one thing I would say, I thought that you would just have to catch some big break, right? Something has to go viral in order to get your business to that next level. To be honest with you, it wasn't anything viral that helped us get there. In fact, it's been no social media in and of ourselves. Our journey's actually been pretty boring. It's find the product opportunities and go launch those products on Amazon. Rinse and repeat over and over and over again. Now, the one thing that has come from going to 5 to 10 million is the team that we have needed to create in order to actually facilitate all of this. Because it used to be, I would be on Amazon. Hey, here's a new product idea. Look at my wife and say, do you think you could do this? Right? She's like, yes, I could do that. And she would just design it, send it to our manufacturer, print it. Now we've got a much, call it more corporate red tape that you have to go through to have team members first vet the idea, looking at the keywords, looking at different manufacturers and things that, we didn't do in the hustle stages. And now my role in the business has shifted. Instead of me working in the business and finding the ideas and brainstorming those and then sharing them with my wife, my job is more as the visionary and in a leadership management role. So can I help facilitate my team members and my managers to make the same decisions that I would, right? And so that has been the evolution, that it's continuous coaching with them, right? And it gets better day by day, and sharing my experience with them and watching them, asking them, hey, what decision are you going to make here? Sometimes letting them fail and making those decisions if there's a decent safety net, and then providing instruction where they need it. And who was it? I had on my podcast, the author of the E-Myth. So Michael E. Gerber, one of my favorite quotes that he had said was, you don't own a business until you, sorry, I'm butchering this quote, but the long story short is, if you are working inside the business, the business owns you. You don't own the business, right? And so that's been kind of my goal, is like, how do I own the business where I'm not working inside the business?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm curious, on a staff of 26, where you've become the visionary and the coach and things of that nature, are they all remote, or do you have any folks that are in-house that you go to an office and you get to see them face to face?
Yeah. So everybody is remote on our team, which is what I prefer. I enjoy working from home. And so everybody's remote. And most of our team, over 20 of our team members, are over in the Philippines. And they're not just VAs, right? I think everybody talks about, oh, I got a VA in the Philippines. These aren't VAs that work in our business. These are management level staff members that we have courted from companies like Coca-Cola, IBM, and other big US, players.
How'd you find them?
Source them. I've got a whole podcast where I dissect how I go through that process, and it's something that I'll go teach when I speak on stages.
What we haven't touched on that. What is the name of the brand, and what is the name of your podcast?
Yeah, so our brand is Hadley Designs, and the podcast is Ecomm Breakthrough. So Ecomm with 2 M's. And the purpose of that podcast is to help 7-figure sellers grow to 8 figures and beyond, sharing tactical strategies and activities that they can implement in their business.
Thank you. Thank you. As far as the employees in the Philippines, are they remote to each other in the Philippines, or do they all work in one particular location? Are you using a service over there? What's the situation?
Yeah, they're all remote and they all work with us, right?
Okay.
So we don't use an agency. So kind of the real quick nuts and bolts of how we go and source these candidates is we'll put up a job posting on the standard Upwork. We'll do it on Indeed. We'll put it on onlinejobs.ph. And our job, and even a lot of those Facebook groups that are plentiful for Filipino VAs, we'll put the job posting on there. And one of the key things that we do is we don't just say, hey, we're looking for a supply chain analyst, right? And then we just kind of leave it at that. We actually provide a very thorough description. This is what success looks like in this role. Here are the KPIs that you will need to achieve. And these are measurable activities. And then from there, here are your daily tasks. Here are kind of some of your weekly tasks. The response that I've received from many of the applicants is I've never seen somebody spend so much time on their job descriptions. This shows me there's something different about your organization than everybody else that's just kind of being lazy and just putting up a job post as quick as they can. So number one, that attracts higher quality candidates. But then secondly, as soon as people apply, I have my executive assistant. She immediately will reply, say, hey, your background looks great, regardless of what their background is. Your background looks great. Can you please take this assessment, this personality assessment? Now, what this assessment does is it does give them a personality assessment, but it also gives them an IQ score. This is facilitated by Criteria Corp. That's who I use. And you send them that, and it basically measures, they've been able to predict that the higher that score, the higher the likelihood that that candidate will succeed in any given role. So that's kind of our first cutoff is you've got to score 70 in the 70th percentile or higher in order to kind of move on to the next round. Then from there, what we'll do is we'll send, if we get, so here's kind of numbers, we'll shoot to get 1,000 applicants for every job.
Holy
then from
cow.
there,
oh my goodness,
we're talking serious volume, right?
Holy cow! You like big numbers. You like big revenue numbers. You like big product numbers. 1,000. Holy cow, man! I'm give me 5 good candidates. Narrow it down.
Here's the thing. Yeah, as a business owner, you're I don't want to look at 1,000 resumes. Yeah, neither do I. That's why this process, it works because it's on autopilot. And here's how it works, right? You get 1,000 candidates. You have them take this assessment. The assessment's going to weed out 90% of your candidates. So you're going to drop down from 1,000 to 100 real quick. You haven't had to spend any time looking at their resume or anything. Okay. Then from there, we'll take those 100 and we'll say, hey, we need you to complete a test project. And then this test project is an actual real life test project that we'll come up with, whether it's something that we've recently worked on for that specific role, or there's a case study that we could leverage from Harvard Business Review or something like that, right? And we'll actually have them go and perform that test project. Now, this requires them to do actual work. Yes. And sometimes you get candidates back that's I don't work for free. And it's I'm sorry, I'm not asking you to work. I'm asking you to participate in this interview process, which, side note, tangent, the reason why I'm so confident in giving them a test project, when I was hired on at American Airlines, they did the same thing. They gave me a test project. They said, you have 2, or I think it was you have 2 hours to complete this. We will call you when your time starts, and then we'll send over the email. You start working on it, and you've got to send that back before those 2 hours are up. I remember that I was in college. I went into a study room, locked it, made sure I was all good to go, right? But I was serious, and I didn't question American Airlines, how dare you? You're going to be billing me at the end, right? So I can charge you for my time. No, I wanted to work at a good organization, right? So that's kind of where that idea came from. And we do the same. So you're going to take 100 candidates. You're going to get 30 to 50% who will actually go do it. then from there, that's the first time that somebody will actually like start looking at their work. So we'll review those test projects. Then from there, you're easily going to narrow it down to like your top 10 candidates, sometimes even 5 to 10. Then from there, a new thing that we added on is we do a group interview. This isn't a group interview with our team. This is a group interview where we bring all the candidates together. And we kind of pitch them up against each other. And every single time everybody's like, I've never done this before. I'm like, yeah, good, because it's putting you in an uncomfortable situation. I want to see how you respond and act. And it is fascinating. So here's the one like magic question that we love to ask people. This is going to be awkward, but I want you, each of you need to respond with which candidate from this panel you would hire for this position. Oh, and by the way, you can't say yourself. Okay.
Wow.
And every time, I think we're hitting 1,000% right now. Every time we have always ended up hiring that person because those natural leaders and the best candidate kind of will shine. And then we'll do like a one-on-one interview with that person and kind of go from there. But that's how we methodically go through and filter 1,000 candidates to find
incredible.
That's a lot to learn. You obviously know what you're talking about, and you speak very well. You share information for free on your podcast. So I want to tell everybody that is listening, you've got a 6-figure brand seven-figure brand, actually 6 figures too, right? You help people go from 7 to 8 figures, but people with 6 figures trying to hire people can use that process. It's all via your podcast, Ecomm Breakthrough, and probably the content that you share there as well, right?
Correct. Yep. I drop everything there.
Okay.
Don't hold much back.
Ecomm Breakthrough with 2 M's, because some people spell Ecomm with 1. I've had this conversation with Mike Jackus many times. And then Hadley Designs for all the stationary products as well. Josh, this has been great, man. I really, really appreciate your time. How does, other than the URLs that I just gave out, how do people get in touch with you? Or would you prefer them to go to those two?
Yeah, probably go to those two. Ecomm Breakthrough. There is a website. You can visit me there. Sign up. I do strategy audits with people as well. So you could reach out for a strategy audit there as well.
It's awesome, man. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks
Great
again,
story,
Joe.
Josh. Thanks for your time, buddy.